What is a hero? A mythological figure, often of divine descent, endowed with great strength or ability? An illustrious warrior? No. It's a person admired for achievements and noble qualities, one who shows great courage. Welcome to the What's a Hero podcast, where we dive deep into what a hero is and what makes them that hero. I'm your host, Ken Frowfelter, and I'm going to be introducing you to some of the world's most likely and unlikely heroes. You may have never heard of them before, and they most likely have never met you. But they all have one thing in common. They are ready to do whatever it takes to help make you better, even if it means sacrificing everything for you. Let's get into it. The shift and has to be able to move, and has to be able to do it easily.
Right.
If you have such a giant hunk of stone that's this right there, you're not going to get through this.
Yeah,
but you're not going to be able to move it. Once it's there, it's there.
Yeah, if you have that that typical "it's all about me" kind of mentality, you'll never understand that.
Right.
And you can't operate through life like that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You know, my karate teacher tells a story about how his dad had this giant, he lived in Hawaii, and he had this giant rock underneath his house, and they went to go dig the basement in the house, and when they got to this rock, they're like, okay, well, let's dig around the rock and get it. Well, they start digging, and they dig, and they dig, and they dig, and years go by, and they get to the bottom of the rock. Years, and this thing was this giant boulder, like the size from Indiana Jones, you know. And he realizes, holy cow, this whole thing's in there. So they had to just dig and dig and dig. So, I mean, years and years go by, and they finally, he and his brothers and his dad, they all dug, and they just kept digging underneath the rock, pulling the sand out, and the rock just eventually just sunk deeper because they were they're digging the sand out. So as much as that thing it's solid and it's strong, you have to be able to move it. And if it doesn't move, you're going to figure something else out. So the things around it have to move for it to move. And if the mission is for it to do its job and everything has to move around it, maybe it needs to be smaller. Maybe it needs to be less. Get things out of the way. So like I said, it just has to be amorphous, has to be able to move and easily. And if you're not moving easily, it's going to be too static, and then the enemy is going to be able to determine, oh, that's there. We just need to move around it. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, they're getting around you because you're not able to move. So,
right. So,
no, that totally makes sense. And I kind of went off on a tangent on rock stories, but so you're in there and you're getting to do the fun job that you like.
Yeah.
And obviously that lasted forever, and you're still doing it today.
Yeah. Well, in the Army, nothing lasts more than a year is what it comes down to.
Right.
So nobody really keeps a job for more than a year. You move on to something else, which I like that about the Army.
Sure.
Because it's constantly teaching you something new, and life's changing all the time. So we got back to Fort Lewis, and our unit was moving to Fort Carson.
Yeah.
So it was kind of a remobilization of the striker units across the board. And so it was like, hey, go find a job. Okay, I'll go find a job. Sure. This is the Army, right? Don't you tell me where to go.
Yeah.
But it was a great opportunity to like reach out and find out, like, hey, what do I want to do? You know?
Yeah.
And so and I haven't brought her up at all. I should have. My wife, Kelsey, she's here from Grants Pass here, and she went to West Point just the same as I did. And that's where we met, and she graduated. Go ahead.
Well, okay. All right. So let's go into how did this happen? How did that happen?
Yeah. So, I mean, we were in our sophomore year, we were in the same company at West Point. We were going through our like advanced field training.
Right.
And she was in the squad right next to me. And we just had worked together, and we really enjoyed working together. And next thing we knew, we're like, man, there's something more going on here. You know, like
kind of like you more than just a buddy.
Yeah, like the end of our junior year, we're like, man, let's explore this a little more. And so, anyways, we dated our senior year, which was great. We had a great time. It was the first time we could like really get off base and explore, New Jersey, New York, all the beauty that is up there.
Right.
And then we went into branch night, and she got military intelligence, which is what she wanted. I got infantry, which is what I wanted.
Yeah.
And then we started talking. We're like, well, where are we going to go get stationed at? Or like, do we want to get stationed together? Are we going to go?
Because you have that option if you're married or whatever.
Yeah, if you're married. Now, we weren't in any position at that point to want to get married. I was 23 and I think she was 22 or something like that.
Right.
And so, it's like, no, we'll just break up after West Point, and we'll go our own ways and do our own thing. Right?
That's awesome. That's a great.
And so it was like, and I mean, it made sense to 23-year-old me, right? So I was like, okay, great, high five. Well, let's talk after we get branched. So if you're infantry, everybody goes into this one hall, and on the wall of this hall, there's like, I guess there's maybe like 200 of us that branched infantry that year, 150, something like that. And there's literally a sticker, or not a sticker, a piece of paper with a piece of tape on the back of it on the wall. Yeah. And it's got how many ever slots to how many ever places. So if there's 10 slots to Germany, there's 10 of those up there on the wall. If there's 10 of them to Fort Richardson, Alaska, which is where we ended up, that's what's on the wall. Right. And there's Fort Bragg and, Campbell and all the other big ones, Fort Hood and Fort Lewis. And so I'm like, man, I want to go to Bragg. I want to be in the 82nd Airborne, history and, the camaraderie of that unit. It's like, that's where I want to go. Shoot, man, I wasn't high enough on the list to get that. So I was like, okay, no worries. 82nd's gone. I want 101st. Man, by the time my time came around, 101st, long gone.
Really?
And so I pulled Germany. I was like, I'm going to Germany. This will be cool. And at the last minute, I was like, man, I've always wanted to go to Alaska. So I went back and I put it up. I was like literally the next guy in the line. And I heard one of my classmates like, man, I want to Germany. It's like, you can have it. Put it back on the wall, grabbed a lot. Honestly, the thing just said Alaska. There's one up at Fairbanks and one at Anchorage. So you don't know which one you're going to. And so, and they're totally different organizations. And so you're like, man, rolling the dice here.
Right.
So I pull Alaska and I was like, I'm going to Alaska. This is going to be awesome. And so afterwards, so that happens for infantry. Engineers are in a different hall at the exact same time.
Right.
Doing all this. And they're separate little groups.
There's a whole bunch of people just clamoring for this.
16 different groups all doing this at the same time for each of the branches. Right. And then we all meet at the Firsty Club, which is the bar for seniors. We all, there's 1,000 of us down there, hanging out afterwards. Some people are crying, some people are high-fiving. Yeah. I didn't want to go to El Paso, Texas, or
right. I've been to Texas. I grew up in Texas.
Yeah, exactly. So there's people that are upset because they had to go there. Right. They got Alaska and they were upset because they didn't want to go to the cold. So it's just a whole nother
It just depended on what everybody wanted to do, and it's just however the dice rolled. I guess.
Yeah, it was how the dice rolled, and it's not like random. It's based on where you graduate in class. So if you're the number one graduate in infantry, you're going to Italy because that's where everybody wants to go. You're going to the 173rd, and so that's kind of how that works. And most everybody gets what they want, or they can sort of kind of trade for it later, maybe once they're in their
get talking to somebody.
Their basic officer school or something.
You got this. Man.
Yeah, when you meet up with like the RTC guys later and stuff like that, and you're like, hey, you really want to go back to Tennessee? I know your family's here, and you can make those trades, from time to time. And so anyways, we meet up there, and she wanted to go to Fort Lewis because it's close to her family here in Grants Pass. And I, of course, wanted to go to North Carolina to the 82nd. Right. So we both were meeting up expecting that that's what the other person was going to say. And she's like, I didn't get Fort Lewis. I'm like, I didn't get Fort Bragg. And she's like, well, where'd you get? I was like, I got Alaska. She goes, me too. I'm like, man, this is fate coming together.
Wow, how fortuitous.
Yeah. So it ended up working out. And, a year after that, probably 8 months after that, she was up in Alaska. She was supposed to actually go to Fairbanks, and I had gotten Anchorage, and we're like, it's 6 hours apart in the middle of a snowy tundra. I'm sure we can figure it out.
Sure.
Maybe. Well, her organization, right before she moved up there, moved to Anchorage. And I was like, man, talk about
somebody's trying to put some chess pieces together.
Working this out.
Sure.
Yeah. So it really, it worked out great, and obviously our relationship developed and became better and better. And by the time I moved up there, we've been together for maybe 3 years or something like that. Yeah. And it was like, let's buy a house together. Let's start figuring out life together, and all while trying to be lieutenants in the military.
Right.
So we got married after 5 years. We when we got back in 2010 from Afghanistan. We got married right there soon after.
Right. Did she get deployed?
Yeah. So we were both deployments, able to time our deployments together.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. So she was in like a military police unit as a military intelligence person, but she was able to transfer over to my unit right before, the greater unit, right before we deployed. So we weren't together, but
we were in the same
country together, which meant, you don't spend 2 years apart. She goes for a year, then I go for a different year.
Right.
We just spend that 1 year apart, which was really nice.
And you still get to, obviously, with the way everything is, you can still communicate, you can still talk.
Yeah.
Still, hey, yeah. And so it's cool because you're on the same time schedule, basically.
Right.
Because you're in the same country. So.
Yeah. And, they call it the green route, but it's like, helicopters flying around, like delivering people and equipment and stuff like that. Right. So, when I was an executive officer out at Bob Tillman, and I called her and I was like, hey, I need maps and I need someone to take these machine guns to get refit to Sharana. She's like, oh, I'm going to Sharana and I'll bring you the maps. So, the helicopter doesn't even touch down. Right. She'd throw these maps out the door. I pushed a couple of machine guns in to her, and I'm like, high five, see you later. It was like 10 seconds.
Make the eye contact. Like, I haven't seen you and I like seeing you.
I haven't seen you in 4 months, but
that's cool.
It's good to see you.
Yeah.
So, that was a good opportunity for us. And, not having to be apart for, 2 years, rather than just 1 year was really, good. And then being in the same country is nice too.
Yeah.
So we got to take our TDY together. If you're there for a year or longer, the military or the Army would send you home for 2 weeks.
Uh-huh.
Well, we were like, screw that. We're not going home. We went to Greece. It was awesome. It was cheaper for the military. So they were like, sure, we'll push you to Athens. No problem. It's right across the river or the Mediterranean.
Right.
So we jumped over to Athens for 2 weeks and we were able to get back to our units a little faster too, which was nice. Cause you don't want, you're a leader, you don't want to be away too long.
Sure.
But it was a great opportunity and, the military provided so many good opportunities to us. It was great.
That's cool. And so you guys got married in 2010.
Yeah.
And were you both in the Army still, and you both stayed there doing that? And so now you got to go.
Yeah. So we both went to Fort Lewis together. And then for some reason, I was infantry going to a military intelligence unit. She was military intelligence going to an infantry unit. So I was able to go talk to the colonel, and he was able to pull me over to the infantry unit that I wanted to be in anyways. We had really good leadership there, and it's where I wanted to be. It was a good unit.
Yeah.
And so she and I had offices that were conjoining right next to each other.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. So I was
as married officers.
Yeah. They're like pods of there's 6 infantry dudes in this one office and, 6 or 8, intelligence people in the next office over.
So she was lieutenant also? Or captain?
We were captains at this point. Yeah.
And so when somebody said go see Captain Yoho.
Oh, they were confused as hell.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. They're like, which one? Male or female?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it was good because we were both on the same staff together and we got to work together. We drive in together in the car and everything. Not a lot of people get to do that.
No,
it's totally unheard of. And we kind of had to pull some strings to kind of make that work out, but it worked out great.
Yeah.
And when we deployed, she was the assistant S2 intelligence person. I was the assistant S3 operations person in Afghanistan for our units. And so, all the colonel and the 1-star general up above, they just called us Task Force Yoho.
Yeah.
Because she was intel and I was ops.
Right. And you worked, obviously you worked well together.
Yeah. For years we've been working together.
Yeah.
And so
you're able to, get communication down. You got all this different stuff down. I can imagine.
Oh yeah. With the communication, you're still a married couple. So,
sure. But what I'm saying is that there was knowledge of things that before you needed to, hey, I need that thing. And you didn't have to go into detail about explaining what the thing was. You'd already explained it over dinner the night before or whatever, because you have little,
because you're spending that much time together.
You have little conversations as a married couple. When you're married, you have these conversations. You don't even realize you're having a conversation.
Yeah.
You say stuff. 3 weeks down the line, a month down the line, you say, oh, hey, check that out. And all of a sudden you both are on the same track because you had that conversation. So I can only imagine it different or similar in the military, but at a greater rate, because you're able to say, I need X, Y, Z, and they know exactly why and how, how come and what for and how many and all these different things because you you've explained things maybe in little incremental parts, and
well, and they know your communication already too. So whereas you might miscommunicate something to somebody who's only known you for 6 weeks, in another organization.
Yeah.
She's known me for 10 years at that point. And it's like, so it kind of generally knows what I'm talking about. And I generally know what she's talking about.
Yeah. You get some kind of paperwork.
Yeah.
Oh, he means this.
Yeah. So it was effective, and it was good for the organization. It was good for us. And
if it's anything like me and my wife's smarter than me.
Yeah.
And so she's able to be like, weren't you meaning this? Yeah. Yes, that is what I mean. I'm sorry. I'm,
right.
So that's kind of cool. That's really cool.
Yeah. And I'm a little bit more the dreamer, and she's the more like grounded. So she helps keep me grounded,
Oh, that's cool.
Which is good.
Yeah.
You kind of need to have that person in your life.
Right.
To do that.
So you guys are there. You're still have every intention of being in there.
Yeah.
And you graduated. When did you graduate West Point?
2007. So this is 2013, 12.
Oh, so about
12. Yeah.
12. You get.
Yeah. And so by 2013, we go to Afghanistan the second time into the South, RC South we were talking about. And because we were working together, and we're on this base that has married couple housing.
Yeah.
There was 6 married couples, and we got to have our own little place. It was kind of, our own little place. Excuse me, is a 20-foot shipping container, but still,
sure, it was yours.
It was ours. It was
both
pretty cool.
Live there together.
We could both live there together, which was upset some people, but other people were like, "Wow, that's pretty cool."
But you're housing two soldiers when.
Yeah. But it was really cool because we were working together every single day. We went to offices that were literally right across the little boardwalk away from each other.
Yeah, and
we were helping to develop the situation and the response to that situation in RC South and Panjway and elsewhere. So
that's cool.
Yeah, it was cool. It was a really cool experience. So not a lot of people got to live with their wives in Afghanistan for 5 months.
No, exactly. So. You hear stories about guys who was in Afghanistan and all I had was my guys next to me or whatever.
Yeah, it was super fortunate.
Yeah. So that's cool. So as you're going through 2012, you're here and you guys just keep going in that you come back to your deployment ends at some point, come back to the States and you both go back to the same place or?
Yeah, we both went back to Fort Lewis. By then we were in command of 2 different companies, but in the same organization.
Right.
And the conversation had become, we're 8 years in now after West Point. Yeah. So like, man, do we go for our 20? Do we want to, how do we want this career to be?
Right. Does your time in West Point doesn't count towards your?
Yeah, it doesn't count at all.
Okay.
Which I get because you're getting a free education out of the situation. So it's I don't think anybody has hard feelings over that. But yeah, so we started having that conversation. We're like, hey, now that our company time's over, we're going to become majors, and we're like, what do we want to do with our lives? Is that what we want to do? Because we've been exposed to that quite a bit.
Yeah.
At this point, we reached out to and we wanted to have a family.
Yeah,
was the big thing. It's like, man, how do you
have kids and we both get deployed and we both are
exactly. So do my parents, your parents raise our kids?
Right.
I mean, it was bad enough with a dog, like shipping a dog from Alaska to Texas.
Sure.
It's how do you do that? And I don't think that's what either of us really wanted to do. And we talked to a lot of the married couples. They were colonels or 1-star generals or whatever.
Yeah.
And sat down and had dinner with them. Like, hey, what are the logistics behind this? How do you make this work?
Yeah.
And you get a lot of answers, and a lot of them I didn't like. I was like, man.
Or you spend time away from each other, or you deploy separately, or individually.
And you have an au pair, and you have there's just a lot of somebody else is raising your child.
Yeah.
You're there maybe for dinner every once in a while, but for the most part, somebody else is raising your child, and that works for a lot of people. I get it, and it's just not necessarily I think what we wanted to do.
Right.
But everybody's recommendation was like, hey, if you're not ready to have kids right now, go to DC. Like, okay, why? Like, because you'll see kind of behind the curtain, you'll see, the politics behind the military, and it'll be a good experience for you. It's like, okay, well, so we'll apply. DC and Hawaii were really our only 2 options. I really wanted to go to Hawaii, to be honest with you.
Sure.
But for the career progression and figuring out what we wanted to really do when we grew up, sort of situation, DC was a better opportunity. And she was in Intel, so that's the home of Intel.
Sure,
all there.
Yeah.
So she got selected to be the general aide for INSCOM, Intelligence Securities Command.
Okay.
So for basically all of Intel,
Right.
the commanding units, the operational units. So she went there for 2 years under a 2-star general, and traveled with them and had all these cool experiences. But she was gone all the time, you know?
Right. Yeah.
And then I went to the Old Guard, so Arlington National Cemetery, and we did the funerals and the ceremonies, all the dress blue stuff you see on TV, right?
Right. Yeah.
So, saluting the president when he comes off the helicopter,
Sure.
and all that kind of stuff, and so did that. It was not necessarily my favorite thing in the world to do.
Yeah.
I get why people really like it, and there's a lot of honor, obviously, associated with it.
And it looks cool and all this stuff like that. But day in and day out, it's
yeah. I know. I was kind of done with
out.
marching, honestly, after West Point.
Yeah, I can imagine.
But I wanted that experience. I wanted to go to DC and kind of see behind the curtain a little bit more, like they were saying.
Yeah.
And I was able to do a lot of cool things with that organization to like help increase tactical proficiency of soldiers. So they kind of like cut me off of some of that. I was still doing ceremonies, but nearly as much as most people. I was doing more like the tactical, like training of soldiers.
Oh, right.
Getting them into. I kind of started a defensive DC thing because there's obviously a lot of capability law enforcement wise to take care of DC, but then there becomes a moment when the military component takes over.
Yeah,
and that 2-star general of the NCR, the National Capital Region, takes over all operations at once things get to a bad situation.
Right.
And I started to realize that we didn't really have like the capacity down at the lower units to be able to operate under that.
Oh, really?
We didn't really understand the guidance, and because we were so focused on the ceremonies and the funerals, and gosh, we were doing so many, active duty funerals up until that point. The funerals were higher because we were in a time of war, and so there's a lot more demand for that. And so we just kind of started coming out of Iraq at that point. This is 2014, so we just started coming out of Iraq at that point. So there was a little bit of we need to move back to more of like the training those soldiers to be infantrymen as well.
Right. Right.
Because when they leave the Old Guard, like if they come in as a private or whatever, they're doing all these ceremonies and some tactical, but when they leave to go be a sergeant or something somewhere, they're now going out to the regular army.
Right. And
if they don't have that knowledge, they are at a deficit that is hard to overcome.
Right. It's hard to pick that up and say, hey, okay, guys, do what I say. That's not the right thing to do. I've been doing this for 6 months.
Yeah.
Solid. And that's
exactly.
Never done that.
And so, there was definitely a need for that. And from my understanding, I think that's still going on, which is really good to hear. But
sure.
Yeah. But that was a really cool mission to be part of and to see. And we did get to go to the Pentagon and see behind the doors and all that kind of stuff a little bit more.
Right.
And we were like, man, this is not for us. Like, I mean, we love this. We love the Army, but if we want to do kids, there's no way to do this with our personalities.
Yeah.
I mean, with somebody else's personality, sure. Our personality, we're like total workaholics when it comes down to it. Like we were married to the military first and then each other second. And so we'd always kind of put our career first, which had worked out for us and was fun and, put us in a good pool of like doing very well in the military. But it was, if we wanted to choose a family, we just didn't see that working out.
Right. Right.
So I also wanted to kind of dip my toe in, the commercial world and see, what it's like being out in industry and,
taking the knowledge that you have, the wherewithal and all this experience,
sure,
and then seeing what you can do with your own name, with your own.
Yeah, exactly.
Self. Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, the military, your career path is very determined.
Right.
And how you perform in each of those, those milestones determines how far you're going to go.
Right.
And so I wanted something that was a little less like predetermined.
Sure.
I wanted to like go out and say, hey, I'm doing something on my own and learn. And I, when we talked about it, I had, I wanted to go into manufacturing and see that world. I'd read a lot of books about it. I was very interested in it. And there's like a huge leadership component to being able to put out good quality products for a good price on time.
Right.
And so I was like, man, I feel like I could take what I know about leadership and my experience and go do this somewhere and be effective.
Right. And none of that motivate people that work for you.
Right.
Want to continue to do it every day so you get richer. Wait a minute. Well, how do you talk people into wanting to help you get better?
Yeah.
Well, you do it by making them want to be better themselves.
Yeah.
And so like you said,
huge leadership success. Yeah.
Huge leadership component to guide people and push people to be better instead of just always wanting to check boxes so you can get a paycheck for work for the weekend.
Sure. That doesn't work very well.
No, not for the long run.
Not in the long run.
No.
So I applied to a bunch of different jobs and talked to General Electric and Medtronic and Cardinal Health and all these others. And so I ended up taking a job at Medtronic.
Right.
So like number 5 in the Fortune 500, huge organization, med device manufacturing company, because I believed in the mission.
Right.
And I think anything you do in life, like if you don't believe in the mission, you probably shouldn't do it.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
So because it's hard to meet your potential if you don't believe in the mission.
Right.
So if you're, as I saw it, they were building life-saving devices, and I was going to be able to be part of making sure that got to the patient that needed it.
Right.
Right. To that mother, father, son, daughter, whatever that needed it. I was a key component to make sure that it got there, that it was of the highest quality, and that it did its job to be able to save their lives.
Right.
And so, and at a different level, we're talking millions upon millions of dollars worth of business.
Yeah.
And making sure that those guys. So, I got hired on to be the program manager for contract manufacturing operations for, I think it's about a quarter. It was a quarter of Medtronic's total business.
Yeah.
And so there was a director over me, and this guy was just a brilliant, science-based kind of guy. And he brought me on, and he's like, "Hey, I want you here for your leadership perspective. Usually we wouldn't bring on somebody like this." And they were only recruiting military academy for this one job that had never been seated before.
Oh.
And so, so it was like me and 2 Naval Academy guys were the final 2, or final 3 people that they were looking at.
Yeah.
And so I end up getting the job, and I get out, and actually, I'm on my terminal ETS leave, my 90 days of leave, and I'm over in China, for like 3 weeks or 4 weeks, whatever it was. And I'm like, man, I wonder if this is okay that I'm in China right now and I'm still technically in the United States military.
Right. Yeah.
But no, I talked to the Army and made sure it was cool and everything. They were totally happy.
But it still feels weird, huh?
It was weird.
Yeah.
And then you get there and you're like, man, these are all really cool people, all really nice people, all here, trying to survive and do
the same thing everybody else is trying to do.
Everybody else in the world is doing. Because I didn't get that opportunity. People are like, oh, join the military, see the world. It doesn't happen unless you're in the Navy.
Right.
Not really.
Yeah, you get to go
in the Air Force. You get to do it a little bit more too, because you're flying around to different places or whatever. In the Army, dude, you're hanging out in the woods, and when you're not, you're in a third world country. And so it's not the same. So if you're joining the military to see the world,
the Army's not the
Army's not the one for you. Yeah, if you want to see the desert, the Army's great.
Or Alaska.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. Now, there are a lot of cool opportunities, obviously, in the Army to go see places, but it's not like you're going port to port to port like you do in the Navy or something like that. Where you're going to the Philippines and then you go to Korea and then you turn around and you're up in Japan or something like that, on your Pacific mission.
Right.
And you're going out on the commerce and seeing things. That just doesn't exist.
Right. The Navy's always on the move. Everybody else is
in the Army
stationed somewhere.
If you're getting deployed somewhere, it's into a combat zone and you're rolling with your platoon and your weapon systems.
Right. So you're not there you're not going to get to see the different districts and the different things that are
exactly
go shopping and whatever.
Yeah. You might see the Orkney Bazaar and take a few shots there or something like that.
Right.
Not the good kind of shots, like the kind that can hurt you. But you end up. It's just a really different experience. And so it was really, really cool to go to China and to see, wow, these guys are all contract manufacturers. So we give them the specs and we say, hey, this is what we want you to build for us. And so there might be 3 places building the same thing for us. And we're trying to meet the same quality standards and that sort of thing.
Right.
So that we are doing the job of saving lives and, taking care of patients.
Right. And so I'm just going to pause for a second. So I understood. I had a friend that went to is it Iran? Yeah. So they went to Iran, and while they were there, and this was just like 3 or 4 years ago, 5 years ago maybe, and they go there, and they were saying the same thing you're saying, is that the people are just awesome.
Yeah.
Everybody has loves, everybody has hates, everybody has pains and joys, and everything has all these different feelings, and they're humans, plain and simple humans.
Yep.
It's not the people wherever we go. It's the governments, and it's these
the power struggle.
That's those are the problem people, and people are people, and so that's when we do things, we're doing things for people. And I've said this before on here, where it is the reason we're on this planet is for other people. We're here to support or help or be with or spend time with or work alongside, live alongside people.
Right.
And the governments just don't want to take over, and they want to tell you how to do this, and you have to do it their way, and you have to pay taxes, and you have to do all these things. It sucks. But when we go to war, every place we've gone to war with, we had to fight the people. We had to fight the regular people. But then it was because each other's government said, oh, we have to do it because of X, Y, Z.
Yeah.
And so like you're even saying in Afghanistan, these people, you're just helping to educate them. Once you educate them, they're realizing, oh, okay, so that's how it is. Because they're people, they're normal guys.
Well, in these last 2 wars, there's more friends than there are enemies on the ground,
Right.
And that makes it really tough, right? That's why the counterinsurgency fight's so difficult.
Yeah.
Because you can't really determine just off the bat who the enemy is. It's not like they're wearing a uniform.
Right. Like World War II was easy. Yeah. We knew who the enemy was.
Exactly.
But then there was times when, our soldiers were in there, and they'd be talking with maybe somebody that spoke English or vice versa. They spoke the other language. Mm-hmm. And they start realizing they're people, or they go over the dead bodies and they see they have pictures of loved ones in their pockets, and they have, Bibles in their pockets or whatever. And they realize these were just, people
doing their patriotic duty for whatever reason. Same reason we follow our country. They follow their country.
Exactly. So. And so in China, I can only imagine, like you're saying, it's the same thing. People are just trying to make food on the table for their kids, and get a roof on their head, and they're trying to do the right thing and be good at it. And,
raise a family, have a purpose in life, and make enough money to be able to survive and do well.
Right.
So it was amazing. It was kind of eye opening. 32 or 33 years old, walking in there, like, man, how did I not?
You're a regular person.
How did I not know this?
Yeah.
How did I not put 2 and 2 together?
Everybody's everybody. Got it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And by then we'd already, Kelsey and I already lived in like 10 different states and everything. So we lived all over the country.
Right.
And still, what you realize is you really can't live anywhere. Like there's good things about everywhere.
Sure.
There's great things about the South. There's great things about here. Up in the Pacific Northwest, there's great things about Alaska. Everywhere. There's great things everywhere.
Yeah.
And there's good people everywhere you go.
Yeah.
And it's not just in the United States.
Sure.
So
I think that's what makes everybody understand it, and that's where we get compassion, we get love, and we get all these positive things, is because people are people. We all understand it.
Right.
It's these outside influences, and there's so much there in through history. There's been so much evil, whether you're talking about My Lai massacre, or you're talking about in Shanghai, or you're talking about, I don't know, Auschwitz, and all these horrible things that have happened. Yeah, those horrible things did happen, but it was by normal people that maybe at one point were doing it right, and they just got into whatever happened. They got into that, unfortunately, but they went back when they got all done. They're like, I'm just a normal person. I thought I was doing the right thing. And so those days of your villain and your good guy, the villain is just evil to the core. He's now that you look at it, we look at things differently. The bad guy is doing what he's doing because he thinks it's right.
Yeah.
And it's not because he's evil.
Yep. You got to have the empathy to put yourself in their shoes too. They have a family to protect and a lifestyle to protect.
Right. And maybe they're just looking at a different way. Yeah. And at some point they get selfish, or they just step over the line a little too much and they lose control.
Sure.
But that doesn't mean that their heart is evil. There's compassion in everybody.
Right.
Now, I get it. There are some people that are not. There are some people that are horrible, horrible people. But there's something that has happened to them to not be that way. Right. I don't think we're born with this innate desire to just destroy and maim and kill. So
no, I don't see it either.
So
I think people are generally good people,
I
and
agree.
they get put into bad situations.
Yeah, I agree 100%. So
You probably know that more as a cop than anybody.
Yeah, you see that
every
all the
day.
time. Yeah, you see, and you get talking to somebody, and they're like,
Yeah.
"Well, I was just doing it. I thought that you can't do that."
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't realize I can't do that. And just maybe sometimes lack of education or whatever.
Sure.
And so, yeah, there's a lot of people that they don't know, and I think that it boils down to communication, whether it was communicated to them or they got educated,
Mhm.
and that's what education is, just being communicated and assimilating that communication. But
Right.
they didn't get that at some point. Somebody didn't tell them that was wrong, or somebody didn't tell them. So, like, somebody stopping and talking on their cell phone while they're stopped at the stoplight. Hey, that's the same thing as talking on your cell phone while you're. Oh, really? Yeah.
The vehicle's in gear.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Okay, now we know. So now you've been educated.
Sure.
And so a lot of people say, "Well, I didn't realize that. Thank you very much for pointing that out." Makes a difference when you get educated, and not to say that you have to go to West Point or you have to go to college or to be educated.
No.
Just learning stuff, whatever it is, because there's people that go to trade schools and they can weld like nobody's business.
And I think that's a better route for most people. And if you go to college, you sure better know what you're going to do afterwards and be striving for that, not just I'm going to college and figure it out.
Yeah, I'm going to get a general education degree.
God, you see people are in debt for the rest of their lives.
Yeah,
over college education,
and they're
flipping burgers at McDonald's. Yeah, for $13.50 an hour, which is great, but you're not paying back student loan.
You're not paying back student loan.
Yeah.
You're barely making your rent or your mortgage. You're having a hard time getting food on the table. Yeah, the money's good, but that's not in long term.
Yeah, a lot of this college stuff's turned into a racket, to be perfectly honest with you. Yeah. It's kind of sad to see because
I agree.
You have people that are enslaved now to their college debt,
mm-hmm.
and that starts accruing your freshman year.
Right.
So by the time you get out,
right, and I don't think it has anything to do with let's just pay it off and call it good. I think what you said is where you have to have this idea where you're going to go with it. Yeah. What are you going to do with it? So
if you want to be a physicist, got it. You need to go to college. You want to be a doctor or a lawyer or something like that, you need to go to college and you have to get that formal education.
Right.
But if it's between that and people, guidance counselor or your parents are just saying, hey, you need to go to college. Well, college degrees don't hardly do anything for you unless you have some sort of technical ability at the end of it to be able to execute and make money off of it.
It's and money enough to pay back the student loan one.
Oh yeah.
And then pay off pay for your house and pay for your bills and feed
just live.
And then go do all the things that you're now trying to keep up with everybody else because social media is telling you need to keep up with the Joneses.
Yeah. So people think that they're entering college just because they're going to be ahead at the end. They're entering college, and if they don't have like a good high paying job lined up at the end of it, they're behind everybody.
Yeah.
Not only did they not make money for that 4 years, they spent money for that 4 years.
Yeah. You're total deficit.
So I'm not one to believe that because I went to college or my wife went to college that I need to force my children to go to college.
Right.
My kid wants to be a welder. That's a great high paying job.
Sure. Yeah.
Right.
And there's some good welders out there because honestly, there's things that need to be welded. We need to glue metal together at some point.
Yeah.
And I know some people that they can weld a bead and it looks really, really good and it's solid.
Right.
And that's the sort of people that we need.
Yeah. Well, we need construction workers. We need people to build homes. We need all those kind of people.
We need everything like that. And you can't just get a job and you can't just say, well, I have a general arts degree. Well, that's cool. Art is great. Don't get me wrong. I love art. My best friend in the whole world he's an art teacher.
Cool.
But his, that's not necessarily always going to pay the bill.
Sure.
If you're good at it, like he's good at it, he does sculptures, he does paints, he does photo, he does all these things. He's really good at it. But there's people that I know that are sculptors or they're painters or whatever, and you're like, oh, do you make money on that? No, okay, good. I don't know, but hey, good job. That
people actually buy that.
It looked really nice.
Yeah.
But I just do it and I went to school for all it. Well, what do you do? Well, I'm actually I work at Walmart or something like that.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. But you're wasting your potential. You're wasting all this effort that you put into. Now you're wasting it.
Yeah.
Because you're not getting to do that at Walmart. But you're also not making any of the money because you're not able to focus on that thing to make yourself better at it. So I know we can go down and we can talk about that all day, just how where your options are. But anyways, you guys get to you say, hey, I'm going to go work. You're working for this company. You're in China, and you said, you realize these people are just what they are, and you're on your.
Well, I was traveling 3 to 4 weeks out of the month, so I was traveling nonstop, which is not. I wasn't like, hey, I'm getting out of the military to have children and travel nonstop.
Right.
It was a great job to like figure out what I wanted to do.
And since you guys were still childless,
it was my wife was still in the Army. Actually,
it actually still worked out.
So she stayed in another 6 or 7 months after me.
Oh, okay.
And so she was traveling with the general officer that she was with, and I was traveling. China, Singapore, all over Asia, Korea and such. But I was traveling all over the United States too. And so I was going to rural North Carolina, and I was going to Dallas, Texas, and I was going to Tijuana and Mississippi and all these other places. And it was just a cool experience to like kind of figure out like, okay, I'm living in DC right now. We want to raise a family somewhere. I have my office was in Boston.
Right.
So I was a work from home guy, before work from home was like really that big of a deal.
Uh-huh.
And so it was like, man, where do we want to go with our lives? So we took off it, we'd always been into the beer industry and the brewing and everything else like that.
Right.
And it was just always fun to go to a brewery and
taste the different types of beers they got. So.
It's that, but it's like, it's the community that's associated with it. Why people get into CrossFit? They get into it not for the gym routine. Yeah. They get into it for the community. Right. Most people.
Yeah.
Right. I see the beer industry, the brewing industry, similar to that. Mm-hmm. And even slightly more different in that it's like a little bit more inclusive. Especially if you kind of set it up as a community center.
Sure.
Right. Because there's not like a lot of guys like current like veterans go into the VFW.
Right.
There's not like community centers in towns anymore. The Lions clubs and stuff like that are like kind of on the down.
Yeah. And the civic groups or whatever.
Yeah. They don't exist. Not in the same way that they used to.
And you look at them as like an older person type of thing.
Yeah.
Like, oh, that's my grandparents do. That's what my retired parents do. What do younger people do?
They go to breweries.
Yeah. Or
because they
softball leagues.
They can take their families.
Yeah.
Right. It's something that they can do with their families.
Sure.
And so, yes, softball leagues and all the, different kind of more active type stuff. The old day of like, dad goes to a blue collar job and then stops by the bar for a couple of beers with his boys afterwards.
Right.
This doesn't really exist in the same respect anymore. Sure. Like it does, somewhat, but not like it used to, not like it did in the, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. It just doesn't occur the same way because they need to be home with their family.
Right.
And that's the expectation. People are co-parenting. It's not like it was before.
Right. Yeah. Woman, you take care of the kids. Yeah. I'm going to go to work and then I'm going to.
And it doesn't. Yeah.
I'll be back late. Like that make sure the kids are in bed when I get home.
Yeah.
There's just a disconnect.
People, people both working.
Yeah.
So you got to get home and take care of those kids.
It's such a disconnect. Why do you have kids if you're not going to spend life with them?
Yeah.
And that's what I always thought with my kids.
It's just the cultural difference between 50 years ago and now. It's just different.
I remember the one time that it was where this epiphany happened for me. I had just gotten divorced with my ex-wife, and we did this thing where the kids were with her one week and I had them the next week. And then the weeks that I didn't have them, and I'd gone their whole life up till my son was maybe 8 or 9 years old at this point. And I'd gone my whole life, and I'd seen them every single day for the last 9 years.
Right.
Every single day. And then all of a sudden, I have a week at a time where I don't have them. And I was like, holy cow, what do I do? So I would go home from work, and I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
And I would, TV was boring. There's nothing on. And, you do all this different stuff. But what else do? I make dinner. Okay, I made dinner, but you only need to make dinner for yourself.
Sure.
Or what else? So then I realized that that's where it really hit me, that we're on this planet for other people.
Yeah.
We have to do things for and whether those other people are your family, your kids, your friends, your groups like you're talking about, your social outlets that you have.
Right.
We're on this planet for other people. Now, whether we're serving them or we're getting stuff from them, that's what we're here on this planet for.
Yep.
Is to love other people and have relationships with other people. And I realized that hit a chord with me so strong at that point that I realized, okay, everything I need to do is for my kids. I need it, and while I have them. And so I did everything for my kids, and I'm always trying to spend time with my kids. And I talk to my kids now as often as I can. They're both, moved out, but that whole idea where I said, our life is for other people. And so once they move out, I have to start realizing I have to do things for other people. And so that's where I get my inspiration to do other stuff,
Sure.
to do things is always for other people.
Yeah.
I'm going to do things for myself. I'm going to keep myself in the loop there as well. But I want to do things for other people, because whether it's, if I'm going to go out on my boat, I don't like going out on my boat by myself. I like to take people with me.
Yeah. Right.
Hey, come out, enjoy with that. Yeah. Enjoy the water with us, that sort of thing. So,
yeah. The mutual experience.
Yeah. So you're out, you figure that the breweries are cool and you want to.
Yeah. So at this point I'd probably been like 350 breweries.
Yeah.
Like all over, because I travel Shanghai, I go to every brewery, wherever, Korea, I go find a brewery if there was one available, or whatever, all these places.
Were you noticing the people, especially in the country, they're the same?
They're the same.
Yeah.
They're very similar. And, the ones that I really enjoyed, that I liked being around, was the ones where I'm watching, young families come and kids are running around and playing and, having a good time. And it's like, wow, this isn't necessarily, you got to have high quality beer. It's part of
the
brewing industry, right? You got to put out good quality products. Yeah. So that's a huge component of it. But you need to create that atmosphere where people, 4 generations of family can come hang out and spend time together, and they all have a good time, and it's a comfortable place for them to do that.
Yeah.
So anyways, my wife and I talked about it a lot, and we're like, we want to create that.
Yeah.
We want to create that somewhere. And so, I was from Houston, and so there's a large brewery down there called Lone Pints has continued to just grow and grow and grow. And we got hold of them, and I work from home job, so I could live anywhere.
Right.
So I was like, Houston, IAH, that's a big airport right down the road.
Yeah.
So
it's very humid there in the summertime.
I know. I grew up there. It was terrible.
Yeah, I know. I've been there a couple times, not a couple times, but I've been there, and it's
a great people, great families, great place to work. The recreation is just not there because it's so humid and flat and swampy. And so it's just not what we wanted to do necessarily, but it was an experience we wanted to gain. And so my wife gets not hired on, but she volunteers to be an assistant brewer. So we're like, all right, pack our stuff. Yeah. And so I'm down at some factory in Mississippi, and my wife pulls up with a trailer with all of our stuff in it, picks me up, and we go down to Houston, move back in with my parents, which I said I would never do it again. But we had a time limit on it. It was going to be 6 to 8 weeks.
Right.
And so we moved in and crashed there, and my wife kind of started an internship, with the, assistant brewing, and learning the industry and finding out, what she likes about it, what she doesn't like about it. And so in meeting the people and everything else. And so we're going around all the different breweries down there. And, I use the notes thing on like my phone a lot.
Yeah, me too.
Right. So like when I go to these places, and I had, on my iPhone, I had like a list of thousands of things I liked and didn't like about these different breweries that I went to. So I'd always like in tap rooms and that stuff too. Right. But like, there's always a plus and always a minus on every single thing. Like sometimes there was more of one or the other.
Yeah.
But went there and we started kind of going through that, and we're like, all right, I think this will help us develop what we want to do and where we want to be. And so at that point, we had already we moved out of our house in DC. We shipped all of our stuff back here to Grants Pass because we knew we wanted to live up in the Pacific Northwest.
Sure.
We kind of narrowed it down. No humidity, not good. Let's get out of there.
Right.
And so after I think 8 weeks, we moved up here and to Grants Pass, and we were crashing at her parents' house. So we exchanged one parent for the next.
Yeah.
And we're like on this journey to figure out where we want to live. And, I'm still doing that work from home job where I'm flying out of Medford. And, and I'm like, my God, it's an extra flight every time I have to go anywhere.
Yeah.
And so I'm
either hitting San Francisco, LA, or,
Seattle. And so, my travel time was like double what it had been out of Houston or out of DC. And so it's starting to like kind of wear on me a little bit. I'm like, man, this is not why we got out of the military.
Right.
Like we got out to, and I think it's almost been a year and a half or something like that, 2 years since I've been doing that job. And so we got here and we're like, hey, look, I like everywhere in the Pacific Northwest, but I really like Grants Pass.
Yeah.
Like it's got all the family activities that we want. It's got the real tight knit community. It's just a great place to be.
Yeah.
It's got great weather.
Yeah. You get the hills, you got the rivers, you get hike, camp.
And we lived in Washington State. We went all over it. We lived in Alaska. We went all over it. And we're like, man, as far as, being in the Pacific Northwest, for us, this is the place to be.
That's cool.
Yeah. And, we already had the family support network here through her parents and everything. And, the friends that she grew up with.
Right.
So it just made sense to stay.
Yeah.
In fact, we bought her parents' house. So
that's cool.
And they live on the property with us too, like in a cabin right across the driveway. And
so you kicked him out. You said, "It's my house now."
My house. Time to go. leave that riding lawnmower too.
If you're listening, sorry. So yeah, that's cool. So you're there, and then you guys said, "Hey, let's start a brewery."
Yeah, well, that was always the intention. So we'd already kind of been working the business plan, figuring it out, and then it was just developing it for this community.
Yeah.
And so we reached out to a guy who's a professional brewer in town here, graduated high school with my wife, Kelsey, and his wife, Brandon Ashley Cruz. And we talked to them and we're like, hey, look, this is the concept of what we want to build. I'm just worried that we're not going to have the right level quality of beer. So we'd like to partner with you guys.
Right.
So that's kind of the route we took. And so, we went that direction, and, everybody kind of has their thing. Brandon brews. My wife, Kelsey, works the tap room, or focuses on the tap room and on employees and all that kind of stuff. I kind of work on the business development and just the overall business side of it.
Right.
And his wife, Ashley, does all our social media. And so it was kind of like a good marriage to make this.
You got enough people to do
right
the
direction.
things that you need to do over branches. Yeah.
And so, so that's the kind of direction we took. And the whole concept was let's build this super family friendly brewery where we'll do more family events than anything.
Yeah.
Where since we've opened almost 3 years now, it'll be 3 years in November. We still do more kids' birthday parties than we do anything else. Really? Because kids say, hey, Daddy or Mommy, I want to go to that stinky beer place. It's so much fun. And so that was what we wanted to create.
That's what we wanted to create. Kids want to go.
And a little bit that's dropped off with COVID because we just can't have the same activities that we did before. Last place we had a kids corner where there was all kinds of toys and stuff to play with, and they had free reign to just run around and play and do whatever they want to do.
And now, unfortunately, you got to put a kibosh on that for a little bit.
Yeah, for a little bit.
Yeah. Now, you recently moved, correct?
Yeah. So 6 weeks ago, we moved into our new location. So we bought 2.5 acres up here on the north end of town.
Sure.
With an awesome view and just a cool spot. And then we built ground up new 5,000 square foot structure and 8,600 square foot outdoor space and all the parking and all the other stuff that goes along with it. And we have another acre and change to develop as we see the need for manufacturing.
So you have all your vats and stuff in there. You brew on site and everything like that.
Yeah, people walk in and they're right in the middle of it from the moment they walk in the door.
Right. So I know the answer to this question. However, I want to ask you for, I guess, purposes of the podcast. But so you go to breweries, I've been to Bend and stuff like that. Yeah. They have all these breweries, and you have pub food. You get burgers and fries and all this different stuff. And so they have kitchens in there as well as their breweries. Now, yours is a brewery specifically, and you don't make food there. You guys don't specifically.
No, we have the food carts.
But you have food carts. So you kind of go into, you work with somebody else.
Yeah.
To say, hey, you contract with them and say, hey, why don't you guys come and put your carts on here and we can be.
Yep. We lease out the spaces to, food carts that we've talked to and have, ideas of what they want to create. And, we try to provide as best of food options as we possibly can to our customer base.
Yeah.
But we even make it to where hey, if you don't like a food option, you can always bring it in whatever you want.
You bring your whatever pizza,
bring your
$5 pizza
from the house. I don't care, man. Just
come here, drink our beer, and enjoy our atmosphere. And
come here and be a family. Yeah. Come here and be friends.
That is so cool.
Come here and be a community. That's the idea.
So you guys have your brewery now, and you guys are up there, and you get 3 years now. You've been running.
It'll be 3 years in November, yeah.
So you guys have been running that for that long, and enjoying it to the point where you're able to go build from the ground up, buy some property and build from the ground up, and say, let's
in the middle
of
COVID, which was crazy to do, but we'd already kind of closed on the property when it.
Yeah.
So I was like, what do? You stop? No way.
Keep going. What did you say before? You said a little while ago, you said you'd be aggressive if you're in the middle of the fight.
Be aggressive.
Just keep going.
Yep.
You just go be aggressive on that. And so you make it happen. And so when people say, hey, how you doing? And they say, oh, living the dream.
Yeah.
You're actually doing it.
Yeah.
You're
my dream for sure. Yeah.
Right. And I would assume your wife's, because she's similar minded.
Yep.
So you guys are living the dream that you want to live. You have this place, you have a family friendly atmosphere. You guys have accomplished all these things. You've been in the military. You've provided all this different stuff, and you're going here. Now you're doing this. What's next on the horizon?
We're definitely not done by any means.
Sure.
We want to continue to develop. Our demand is significantly higher than it was before now because we have a larger space, and, more notoriety, and the beer is of the highest quality, so everybody wants it, and so we have like a lot of we built the infrastructure to be able to handle this, but we have more production that we need to increase, capacity we need to increase. There's still, we want to continue, especially, I can only speak from my wife and I's, point of view. We really want to just continue to find ways to like be part of the community. That was the one thing we really missed out in the military. Yeah, we lived in all these different states, but we weren't really part of the community.
Right. Yeah.
We were part of our own little separate military thing, and we deployed, we'd be gone, and when we weren't gone, we were TDY somewhere. So
right. Yeah.
So I was living in Fort Lewis, but I was spending all my time in Georgia, or whatever.
Right.
And so we wanted to, part of our our focus when we got in the military is, yes, let's have the family. So now we have a 2-year-old, and we've got another one on the way, which is awesome. And but let's also be let's be a huge part of the community.
So not just society, but your community. You're in that part that you're playing a part in making sure other people are doing well. Yeah. You're supporting each other, and they're supporting you.
Well, and I think that's what communities do, right? If you look at hyper local economics, that's what communities do. They patronize each other, they're friends with each other, they take care of each other. Yeah, that's kind of what you do, and that's what drew us to Grants Pass. It's a small enough community where you can still do that. Yeah, and it's the growth here is somewhat limited by the mountains that are around us.
Sure, yeah.
So that's attractive as well. So that the community it's not going to be Houston, for instance, or Phoenix,
right,
where it just keep on adding on.
Yeah, because there's nothing but flat land, and you can just keep going.
Yeah,
I don't know. I've seen flatland places that are, there's no growth, there's nothing happening.
Sure.
There. So like I had gone to Grand Forks, North Dakota one time, and we'd gone to the Air Force Base there, and the Air Force Base is huge. It's the hugest thing there. Yeah. And then you actually go to the city of Grand Forks, and they have a Target, or they have Target maybe, or a Kmart, and they've got a Walmart, and they've got some grocery stores.
Right.
And then you're like, they close up pretty early around here.
Yeah.
Oh, you mean like 9? No, I'd say closer to, 7 or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, whoa. So there's not a lot going on. However, you can see, as far as the eye can see, it's just, you don't even see a mountain. Mm-hmm. And I was like, well, they have so much growth potential.
Yeah.
But there's nothing else there.
Yeah.
And so, like you said, here there's not a lot of growth potential because mountains do kind of block. I guess you can start growing up over the mountains, but that's pretty difficult. But whatever the case is, there's a lot of stuff to do, though.
Yeah. However, there's a lot to do.
As long as the weather's good.
Well, and there's a lot that still needs to be done, right?
Yeah.
We have
absolutely.
We have people that are doing small manufacturing out of their garage, and then they're not finding anywhere else to grow into.
Right.
Because we just don't have the industrial space here in town. So they move to Central Point or Rogue River or Medford or elsewhere.
Yeah.
And we want to try to keep those people here.
Yeah.
They're part of our community and part of our economy, and we want to see them stay.
Yeah. And the same thing with,
there's a lot of work to be done still.
Work to be done for them to go find a place to do it. Yeah. But also workers, people that could come in and actually do some work, and the people that want to work. Everybody's hiring. If you look at it, everybody, there's now hiring. I actually saw a now hiring inquire within sign just the other day. Okay. And I was like, holy cow. You don't see that too often. Usually it's go online and go check this out. Yeah. Whatever. No, they're saying, you come on in, we will talk to you right now.
Yeah.
And so if anybody's saying that, well, there's no jobs out there, there are tons of jobs.
I don't think there's ever been more jobs than there is right now.
I think there's just, unfortunately, it's the COVID thing. People don't want to work. People don't.
Well, they're being incentivized to not work.
Right.
Part of the problem, especially, our industry with like a hospitality service industry, you talk to the other, restaurant and bar owners in town and stuff like that. And shoot, they're having a hard time getting open because they just can't get the employees, the numbers that they need to be able to run the operation.
Because then people come in, well, the service is terrible. Well, you got one person who's running their butt off.
Yeah.
And she's trying to make everybody happy, but she has an incredible work ethic, but she's also has physical limitations as a human being.
Yeah.
She could fly. Yeah, that'd be fine.
We've tripled our number of employees in 3 weeks.
Wow.
And I need to add more. So
that's awesome.
Yeah. And it's hard to find, and especially because we're looking for a very specific kind of person.
Right.
Because it's not a bar. It's not a restaurant. It's a brewery. It's a community center.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's cool.
That mentality behind the bar.
So where could people find out about what's it called?
Weekend Beer Company.
The Weekend Beer Company. Where can people find out about the Weekend Beer Company?
Weekendbeercompany.com.
Just that simple.
Easy peasy, yeah. Facebook too, Instagram, all those sorts of things. But I mean, the best experience is to come in and just see it yourself. And
even if you have to travel, you need to travel 4 hours just to come to the Weekend Beer Company. Do it because it's worth it, right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. I mean, we're right on the I-5, so if you're passing through Southern Oregon, there's no excuse not to come in and say hello. If you're a veteran, come in and slap your shoulder patch up on the wall, and let's talk some stories. And
so that's another thing that you guys do. You take patches from military units, you take patches from law enforcement, you'll take patches and you'll put them up all on the walls.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It represents our community in the things that people, that the giving and the service that people have actually done.
That's cool
in this community.
Yeah,
it's cool.
Yeah. So I always ask this of everybody: where, if you had the opportunity, and I guess not everybody, there's a couple of people I've missed, but if you had the opportunity to go back and fix something, everything's done, everything's passed, and you're at the end of life, and you have the opportunity to go back and fix something, or make something right, or change something, or tell something to somebody that you never got a chance to. Is there any opportunity that you would take that you would do that?
Oh man, I'm sure if I had time to think about it, I'd name like 10 or 15 things.
Yeah.
Sure. I don't know. I don't have a lot of regrets. I think one of the things that I always come back to is, people tell you there's never a good time to have a family.
Yeah.
And, we really tried to find that good time and create it.
Yeah.
It doesn't exist. So if you want to have a family, have a family.
Just go do it. Just get together.
Do it.
Yeah.
And the only other thing I would say is find the thing that we were talking about that Simon Sinek thing, finding your purpose, right?
Right.
And that's a lifelong endeavor for most of us.
Yeah.
But at least take the risk, right?
Yeah.
And I've always kind of been a risk taker on pretty much everything. Mm-hmm. So I kind of live that right now, and I always have. And but there's times where I was like, man, I wish I would have taken just a little bit more risk because the reward was there.
Yeah.
Especially when you're younger, you can take significant amount of risk just to find what it is that you like doing in this world.
Yeah.
Like you don't have to just sit there and do the day to day and
because somebody said you have to go to college, and somebody said you have to go work at this place.
Exactly. Who cares what they say?
Go live, do what you want to do.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you want to do?
Well, it's like what we said earlier.
I didn't really want to go to college. I wanted to be a military officer.
Right.
But I had to go to college to become a military officer. Like that's kind of how that works.
Well, like you said, you had this opportunity that you wanted to. Yeah, I think I want to do that. But what you really wanted to do was this.
Yeah.
You're doing the same because it was before you, and this is what they told you, and it might be the good thing. You're like, okay,
sure.
And then it didn't work out, and you're like, oh, but we're going to give you this thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's what I really wanted. That's awesome. So who knows? Maybe that thing that you really want to do, you need to go do it because there's a chance that it may not be there, or just go after it and you realize this is it. It really is what you wanted to do.
Yeah.
So.
And if you find something that just isn't scratching the itch, dump it. Move on. I think I've done a different job every year. This is my longest job I've ever had, is working at this brewery.
Being your own boss.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Well, shoot, I'm
Well,
not my own boss.
well,
The customers are the boss,
sure,
right?
Sure.
You know?
Yeah.
And that's always true.
But you work for your wife, and then she says customers are bosses.
Pretty much.
There you go.
Yeah, it's pretty much how it rolls. But yeah, I mean, it's one of those things. Like I just, you know, and I think maybe because we're a little bit more, you know, for the last couple of years behind the bar and everything, is, you know, you hear people come in and they're just so depressed with like what they do, and I wish I would have done. And it's like, dude, no way.
Yeah,
and back to what you're saying.
Yeah.
Like,
If you wish you would have done it,
you should have done it.
go do it. Yeah.
And it's not too late. It never is. I wish I would have went to college. Okay, you're 45. Go back to college.
Right. Yeah. And that's what they say, you know, and especially to that point where you're, you know, I wish I was more of this, or I wish I was more of a leader, or I wish I was more, you know, all these different things.
Don't say I wish. I'm going to become this.
Or even along those same lines, you know, I used to be able to do that. Yeah. And I mentioned this in a couple of podcasts ago, is being an I used to, you know. Yeah, you used to do that. Cool. Yeah, you might used to go run marathons or something like that. Sure. You can't, you have bad knees or whatever the case. Yeah, sure. You can still do things. You can still be active. Maybe you're not a marathon runner, but you might be a CrossFitter, or you might be a, you know, go get a martial arts class or something and be like, oh, I never thought I could have done this, and this is great. I'm actually moving, and I'm being active again. And so get rid of the I used to's and get rid of the I wished I would have. Mm-hmm. Because if you're alive, you still have an opportunity to do whatever you want to do.
Yeah, you do.
So
we're ever evolving creatures.
Exactly. So, you know, I want to thank you for coming on. And if you are listening to this on your favorite podcast host site, like Apple Podcast or Stitcher, or you know, I don't do it on iTunes anymore. It's Apple Podcast, but you know, any of the podcast platforms you can think of, thank you, and put a review on us, what you feel, what you think about us, and all this different stuff, and we'll try to keep living up to your standard. And when you, if you're listening to it, you know, let your friends know about it. Let your friends, you know, because it helps us, and hopefully it helps you. Just get something out of this. So that's our hope and intention on doing the podcast here. But you can get a hold of us on any one of those podcast platforms. You can also get a hold of us on LinkedIn, on Twitter, on Instagram, and on Facebook. And we will, you want to say anything to us, about us, for us, we're for you. And we're willing to have a conversation with you on that. So, check us out. Also check out the Weekend Beer Company on all those same platforms. Instagram, right? You're on Instagram? Yeah, Instagram, Facebook. All those guys, go over there. Go. You driving through Oregon, stop off I-5, like you said, and check them out. So just kind of going off of all the things that we've said, you know, life is what you make it. Life is going to be how you make it, and you get to do anything you want on this planet. So whatever it is, you know, put people first, serve other people, and make it a good one. Make it, you know, what it is you're on this planet for, and that's to help other people and to be a positive influence. And if you think, well, I'm not very positive, well, become positive, because that's the only way you're going to be able to develop relationships and have any influence and any say in what other people do, where they want to do what it is you're asking them. So until next time, we have been the What's Your Podcast. This has been Troy Yoho. I have been Ken Frowfelter, and we are clear.